You can buy a kitchen full of modern tools, non-stick pans, electric grinders, precision kettles, knives forged with space-age steel, and still struggle to do one simple thing consistently: make food that lasts. We live in a world where everything is fresh until it suddenly isn't. Fruit looks perfect for 2 days, then collapses overnight. Meat demands refrigeration. Leftovers turn suspicious, and the moment the power goes out, your whole food system becomes fragile. Now imagine the Middle Ages. No refrigerators, no freezers, no plastic containers, no use-by labels, no supermarkets restocking every morning. And yet, medieval people managed to store food through winters, feed families, and survive long stretches when fields produced nothing. So here's the question: how did they keep food from rotting when they had no cold machines? The answer isn't one magic trick. It's something more uncomfortable. Medieval life treated food as a living thing that had to be managed, not a product you own. They used 4 ancient strategies: simple, repeatable, and brutally effective, because they understood a rule we keep forgetting. Food doesn't spoil randomly. It spoils when conditions let the wrong life take over. Medieval preservation wasn't about perfection. It was about controlling those conditions. And once you see how they did it, you'll realize something. Modern people didn't evolve past these methods. We just outsourced them to factories and refrigerators. The logic still works. The only difference is we stopped practicing it. To understand medieval preservation, start with a scene that would have terrified them: a warm, damp kitchen with raw food sitting out. Warmth plus moisture is an invitation. It's a banquet for microbes. And medieval people learned through bitter experience that you don't fight spoilage by wishing it away. You fight it by changing the battlefield. Their first weapon was the oldest: drying. Drying doesn't kill everything. It simply removes what most spoilage organisms depend on: water. When you dry meat, fish, fruit, or herbs, you turn something fragile into something stable. It's not glamorous, it's not trendy, but it's physics. Water is life's highway. Remove the highway, and most unwanted life can't move. Medieval drying was everywhere. Fish hung in cold air. Herbs were bundled and suspended from rafters. Fruit became leathery slices. Even grains were protected through careful drying and storage, because one damp harvest could ruin a village's winter. Notice what's happening here. They weren't relying on freshness. They were converting food into a form that could survive time. The second weapon was salt. Modern people think of salt as a seasoning. Medieval people knew it as power. Salt pulls water out. It makes the environment hostile to many spoilage organisms. It turns meat into something that can travel, be rationed, and survive. Salted pork, salted fish, brined vegetables, these weren't gourmet hobbies. They were insurance policies. But here's the twist. Salt wasn't used randomly. It was used strategically. Too little, and you fail. Too much, and you create a food that's hard to eat. The art was balance, and balance came from repetition, not recipes. The third weapon was smoke. Smoke is not just flavor. Smoke is chemistry. It coats food in compounds that slow spoilage and discourage insects. It dries the surface. It creates a barrier. And it takes something that would rot in days and stretches it into weeks or months, especially when combined with salting first. This is why medieval kitchens often had smoke everywhere. The smoke wasn't a failure of ventilation. It was part of the system. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, okay, drying, salting, smoking, that's survival food. Hard food. Yes, but medieval people had a fourth weapon that feels surprisingly modern, because it's not about making food dead. It's about letting the right life win. Fermentation. When you ferment cabbage into sauerkraut, you aren't preserving it by freezing it. You're preserving it by creating an environment where beneficial microbes dominate and crowd out the dangerous ones. You take raw food and you guide it into a stable state. Medieval people didn't talk about microbes. They talked about results. They learned that certain processes reliably turned food into something safer, tangier, longer lasting, and sometimes more nutritious. And here's the part that matters. Fermentation is a controlled surrender. You're not stopping life. You're choosing which life gets to rule. This is the medieval mindset in one sentence. Preservation is control of conditions. Drying controls water. Salt controls water and microbial pressure. Smoke controls the surface and insects. Fermentation controls the ecosystem. And none of these require electricity. So why does modern food feel so fragile? Because modern systems made you dependent on cold as the primary solution. Refrigeration is amazing, but it creates a single point of failure: temperature. If temperature fails, your strategy collapses. Medieval strategies had redundancy. They stacked methods: dry, then smoke; salt, then dry; ferment and store cool. Layer defense, not just convenience. This is why medieval pantries looked like systems, not shelves. They weren't storing food. They were maintaining stability. So, what can you steal from this today without turning your house into a smokehouse? Start with the simplest principle. Stop storing food in its most fragile form. If you buy herbs, dry some. If you buy fruit, slice and dehydrate some. If you cook meat, consider turning leftovers into something that lasts longer than tomorrow. Freeze if you want, but also think like a medieval person. Can you reduce water, reduce exposure, reduce surface spoilage? Second, use salt as a tool, not just a flavor. Light brines for vegetables. Salt rubs for certain meats before cooking. Even simple salty marinades change how long something stays good. Third, ferment one thing. Just one. Not as a trend, as a skill. Fermenting cabbage is cheap, forgiving, and teaches you the logic of controlled conditions. Once you understand that, you start seeing food differently. And finally, learn the medieval lesson of storage. Keep things cool, dry, and protected from air movement that brings moisture. You don't need a castle cellar. You need awareness, a sealed container, a dry cabinet, a cooler corner, less humidity, less exposure. Because medieval people didn't preserve food with miracles. They preserved food by respecting the fact that nature is always trying to reclaim it. Modern life tries to pretend spoilage is an accident. Medieval life knew spoilage was a certainty unless you designed against it. And once you start designing against it, one small habit at a time, your kitchen becomes less fragile, not because you went backward in time, but because you finally remembered the rules time has always followed.